Ladies and gentlemen, the deed is done. Olof Mellberg, head coach of St. Louis City SC, has been removed effective, Justin, about 30 or so minutes ago? 20 minutes ago now, via the press release from St. Louis City. And I want to start off on, I think, probably the most important thing we can say today, Justin. You hit it on one of the last episodes we just did, and that is that we can be happy about that from a sporting perspective and happy about that from a fan perspective. But all of this goes without saying that you'd never love to see someone lose their job, their livelihood. I don't think anyone questions, his work ethic and the time and the blood, sweat, equity that he put into his time here. Product wasn't there, the outcomes weren't there, but that's not to say that we look down on him for that. It's just wrong place, wrong time. Again, we wish him the best, but he's a human. Don't want to see anyone dancing on that grave. But an unfortunate situation from a human perspective.
Yeah, but I'll also level set, Jake. And if you're not doing your job well, you're going to get fired. And this one, and obviously it's a little bit quicker. No one is usually getting fired in their first, 4 months, 3 months of their job. But when you have results like this, and we're sitting in second to last in Sports Shield, third to last with 11 points through 15 games played. That is 0.73 points per match. And we talked about it before the season. You need about 1.4 points per match to make the playoffs. So we need to be doubling that the rest of the season. I mean, it's just been absolutely terrible for a start. I agree from a personal aspect. You definitely want to feel for the guy. That's a lot to just pick up and move over here and then get bounced that quickly. But it's a business again. So it's not something that we just keep riding on. And both of us have been talking about it for like a week. I felt like we should have done this last week. I don't know what we were waiting for this. And then they're dropping it. Like everybody thought it was going to be on Memorial Day. And then everybody thought it'd be this morning. And now it's like it was almost 7 p.m. by the time this thing dropped. So
yeah,
just some weird timing.
It is. You wonder what held up some of the timing, because I think you and I both thought it definitely should have been last week, could have been the week prior even. And now today, you dance them out in front of media, you have a full practice. I don't know what was said behind closed doors and whatnot, but today looked like, take all the narrative out of it, like all intents and purposes, a very normal day to be a St. Louis City player and staff member, but obviously ends with him being removed. Justin, maybe before we break down the news and who's stepping in, and people probably want to talk about coaching links in the future and whatnot, I want to start from the beginning with him, because we talked about it with David Goss on the last show that we just did and released today. So we're back on the mic 2 days in a row here, doing it for you all. That this was a slow, it probably looks quick now in hindsight, but it was a slow sort of, I'd say, kind of falling off of a cliff very gradually past probably the first 4 or 5 games, where we could oversee or look past some of the gaps or some of the issues or malfunctions attacking wise within the team, because our defense was so sturdy and so solid. And we even looked past, the idea, Justin, of the press was not the same, right? Like the intensity, the pressure, the all 24/7 players, the players that just put everything onto the pitch, that sort of slid under the wayside. And then what we saw was a really stingy defense. And then that goes, I say, probably as the injuries start to mount as well. And we can't score either. And so you're profligate in front of net. You can't finish. You don't have a superstar that's going to bail you out of these games. And then the defense starts to get leaky, especially late on in games. You're blowing games. You're blowing winning positions. You can't come back in games. So I think there's a lot of different things from a fan perspective that, contribute and roll up to this, Justin. But anything of those you want to pick into or kind of chat about that, again, paints the context as to why we're here today?
I would say the main thing, Jake, is it's the lack of, and I mentioned this yesterday, the lack of the choice in starting 11. I feel like it was almost mind games that were being played with some of these guys. Yes, I know we had to deal with some injuries, but even then, the in-game management was poor, in my opinion. I still don't know how I feel about the 5 in the back. Obviously, we started out strong when we were fully healthy, and we had Roman Berkey. Berkey goes out, Lubin goes out, and we all fall apart. So you could try to link a little bit of that to it, but the fact that there was no changes in that, and he's just stuck in his ways, and we're gonna make this system work for us when it obviously wasn't, especially with those injuries. That's why I think we're here. I think it's a mix of that with the starting 11, then what you're doing tactically from an in-game perspective. To your point, Jake, that we've always talked about, the worst stat that we could have for this team is we have yet to gain a single point or 3 points from coming from a down position. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we hadn't even scored a goal after we had gone down in a game. And I think that shows a lot of an in-game management. Yes, you could put a little bit of that on the injuries and the lack of subs we could bring on. But you saw that we picked up Zan. We have Simon Betcher has been healthy. Celio's been back. You got plenty of these guys offensively. It seems like our defense has been kind of falling apart, but that's not what's keeping us out of these games. We just can't score goals. So it's one thing for me. I get the injuries. I'm going to give him a little bit of a little bit to give like an understanding in that sense. But the fact that he didn't make a single change in his ways in the last 12 matches is what truly got us here.
I think I love it. I totally agree in the commentary there, Justin. I think we've said it a couple times. I'll try to say it a little bit differently this time is, again, you've got to make the most of what you have available. It may not be ideal and it may not be advancing you towards like that future or long-term vision, but it's got to be, doggy paddling, keeping your head above water. And you can't be winless in 11 in this league because you play some teams that are probably equally as poor as you, especially on paper, if not worse, looking at you, Sporting Kansas. And my thing I want to say here is, Justin, let's put it into a little bit of a comparison here. So you and I, we work big boy jobs, and let's say you're brought on by a client, the client being St. Louis City SC, to, bring a team here to do this project for them. And all of a sudden, you're early on in the project. You've got some really specialized, team members on the team, and you lose them. And the backups to those, or the backfill for those roles, aren't as sturdy or as solid in those skilled positions that you have on your team. What do you tell client? Or how does client shift their expectations? Because they just paid for you to come here. They scouted you for a long time. They chose you over other partners of theirs. They brought you in. They're not going to take no results. You've got to do everything in that time period to show value, to show some sort of incremental progression, or something where I, being the client, can say, you know what? I know that you're hamstrung right now, but you're doing the best of what you have. So I'm going to bide time with you. I'm going to be patient with you because I know that you're doing good work with the tools you have available. And that is where the difference is to me, because no one can say that. I think going to these games, watching these games, no one walks away from saying, hey, you know what? At least he's playing the young guys. Or, hey, you know what? At least we're generating chances and looking like a threat. Or, hey, you know what? We scrounged out some dirty wins. Like, there's nothing that I think you can come back and say, hey, he did this. And that to me is the biggest knock on a coach like this, and probably why they go out of their way to remove him or release him so early on.
Jake, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I think it's a lack of change. He came in here and he had one style, and he was going to make that style work with a team that people are talking about. Mike Ritter's calling it out here too. They're saying Lutz out. Do you think, Lutz created the team, which is also the style. You're picking players from wherever to help fit this style. But if he's going to come in here and do a 5 in the back, completely change the style and try to make these players fit there, and then also kind of play some mind games on the starting 11 and when you're going to come in, if you're not going to be kind of honestly, Jake, if you remember when they first brought him in, they said, he's Swedish. He's just a tall guy, doesn't say anything, doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't want to do the media. It seems like he almost kind of pushed that on the players as well. And that's just not something that you could do because you're going to lose the locker room. And if you lose the locker room, you're going to lose games. And I think we're seeing that a lot here. Also, a couple of people are throwing some funny comments in here. Will the coach have to wear real pants at his next job? I don't know when his next job will be, Braden, but I appreciate that. A lot of people are obviously then just calling out that it's about time that it happened. I agree, but I have a question though. Going back to Mike's, then Jake, is Lutz next, or where's the buck stop right now?
Yeah, well, we can talk about what Lutz had to say on this, but you got to be thinking that he's got to be feeling pressure on this as well, because again, the buck stops somewhere. I think probably ultimately it's Diego before you get into ownership, of course. But from a sporting side, Diego is the senior most, but I'd say really when you think about sporting, it's probably Lutz. And Lutz has, that 5-year vision, that 5-year goal of what he wants City to evolve into. And we've taken a significant halt in that progression. And Olaf, say what you want about him or dislike him, like him, doesn't matter. Lutz probably had a majority piece of pie say in determining who got hired. And he picked Olof Mellberg, right? Like, it's not like Carolyn Kindle had this super strong opinion that Olof Mellberg's her guy. You know what I mean? So the hiring you can attribute really majorly to Lutz. And you also have to give credit where credit's due. And you know what? I give Lutz some credit in, hitting the button and stopping this now versus saying, hey, you know what? The season's already washed. We're going to be really patient with him and let him, come into his own and get injuries back. I applaud that. But I do also think that this could be your last merry-go-round if I'm Lutz Pfannenstiel, and you have now lost Carnell, who's looking real pretty over in the East. And you've got now lost Olof Mellberg. You had Hackworth that was doing some good things in here, but he's got to be feeling some heat.
I mean, Jake, so if you think about it, we've now fired 2 coaches in the last calendar year. Can you look up? I don't remember when we fired Carnell, but we only had like 8 games left.
July 1 last
July
year.
1. So we fired 2 coaches in 11 months. And at this point, Jake, it's someone had a very good question of, hey, at some point, is the person that's hiring them doing a good enough job vetting these guys? And it doesn't seem like that was the case. But Jake, you already mentioned it. I'll let you kind of take us into this quote. I'll just pull it up so everybody else can see it. But what are your thoughts on what he's saying here? I mean, it's obviously you got to say the right words. Do you think it's scripted? Do you think that he's kind of feeling the hot seat as well? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll read it, and then you and I could both react to it here, Justin. So for those of us that aren't following us visually on audio here, Lutz's quote is saying, "The decision to part ways with Olaf goes beyond just results. We've analyzed the team's performances across a number of factors, including the need to execute against a style of play that led to the team's initial success and has been part of our DNA for 4 years. As a club, we have certain standards we need to meet and believe a coaching change was necessary to improve our overall performance and return to a winning culture." Last thing here, Justin, you and I were talking in the room right before this. His last parting quote was, "Our fans deserve a better performing team, and we intend to give them one." That's brownie points. He knows what he is doing and saying when he's saying that, because he's probably also feeling this. And by the way, you're going to have to hold him to that now, right? Like, I think everyone now knows that Lutz is not made of steel, right? Like, this is a guy that is going to be a little bit vulnerable unless things really start to go north. So I agree with a lot of what he's saying. I think most importantly, we talked about City 2.0, Justin, and Olaf was brought in to bring to life a version that built on top of the prototype that we thought was pretty successful to start with as a playing style, City 2.0. We've gotten away from that. We're like in a totally different code branch now. We've really branched off from where we came from, and we had some early success there. So getting away from your DNA, never going to help you when you have a 5-year vision. The coach doesn't really care, from what you could tell on the field, to kind of embrace and build on top of that, kind of brought his own. And because to me, Justin, City 2.0, tell me what it means to you, is intensity, is pressing, but it's also adding a little bit of that quality on the ball as well. Like, we don't want to constantly be playing against the ball. We don't want to constantly kick it long and go direct. We want to be able to play both sides, right? Like, really put teams under pressure, but also have quality and be able to build up and create goals on our own as well.
Honestly, Jake, what you just described was what Hack did when he came in. Because I think, and yes, Hack got some pieces right at the right time. When you look at Hartel, Twisher, and Simon Betcher, but we went from that energy drink soccer where we were just flying around by the seat of our pants and leaving 50 yards of space open for counters, to tactfully pressing. And when one person goes, everybody goes, as opposed to everybody just staying. And I remember last season, Jake, we would have, at the beginning of the season, we have 3 forwards on the 18 box when the other team was doing a goal kick. And that was a little bit too much. But now we got into the rhythm when Hack was in here that, hey, we're going to tactfully press. And then if it's not there, we're going to track back, get it, and we're going to work it back up the field. We're not going to lump it long. And yes, we can play Klaus whenever we need to get out of those positions. But that's something that I thought Hack did really well. And I think we both talked about this, Jake. I kind of thought Hack was going to be the interim head coach. Ends up not being him.
Yeah. So for those, again, that haven't seen the full press release or haven't read it all, City is opting for David Critchley to take on the role as the caretaker manager. God, soccer has some fun titles to mix in here. But yeah, for anyone that thought Hack is just coming back, he is not. He's actually shifting into David's role as backfill with City 2. So I expect nothing but positive things for City 2 as they continue the season. Remember, Hack was also the coach of City 2's original season where he went to the finals, which was a blast. And they're bringing him back into that role to see out the rest of the season there. I'd imagine, unless we hire a coach, which we'll get to here, Justin. But David Critchley, for those of you that may not know who he is, we brought him on really early on into the club in 2021. And he's really been behind the scenes in the academy program, really making that work, coaching both our U16 and U17 teams, and then shifting up into MLS Next Pro with City 2. So he is their current coach, is now being elevated. And they brought him on last November into the City 2 kind of staff and fold. But Justin, City 2, 6-4-1 record so far this year, scoring 20 goals in those 11 matches and points per game of 1.82. He obviously knows a lot of these guys already, Justin, because some of these guys kind of float back and forth, especially in rehab between City 2 and City's first team. But the most important thing to me, Justin, is that, again, he's just here to help steer. Like, I don't think they're probably going to entertain a full-time gig for him unless things just go super well. But what I can say about City 2 is that reminds me of City year one, the first team, where you are pressing, you are scoring goals, you are clinical, you are a super intense team. And it reminds me of what we had used to be, and we are definitely not this year. So I get it, right? Like, you're bringing a guy back that is right now in a third division, right, in the US, playing that style, executing it well, and has had his hands in a lot of these players already.
Absolutely. I think this is the similar situation with Hack, that this guy obviously is having a fantastic season for City 2. And yes, it's a very different style and level when you get to the MLS. I'm not going to say that automatically translates, but it's a locker room play. It's a guy that everybody else already knows. We're not pulling somebody in from the outside right now. And Jake, I honestly don't think we're going to be pulling anybody in from the outside during this season. I mean, at this point, what happens? We have two chances or three things. Yep. We just explode. We do really well. And why would you drop him then? We keep doing poorly and you're going to try to make a rash move and sign another dude randomly from Europe, or we just kind of maintain steady course and we finish like 14th. And I think either way, we're going to have him throughout the regular season. Jake, the one thing I didn't know was that, I'm looking at, and the assistant coach is coming with him, Baggio Ustic. He played in the MLS. So he played for Chicago Fire. I think, or where was he at? LA Galaxy, sorry, and the Chicago Fire at the previous time. So this is another guy that he's bringing up with him, one of his assistant coaches that'll be up, and you'll see another new face on the sidelines.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I want to talk about that topic you just brought up, Justin, with, okay, so now David comes up and, again, I'm going to take off the table the miracle season where we turn things around. Like, it's this magical run and he was the perfect fit, the right time. We go win MLS Cup. I want to talk about reality here because we were here 10 months ago. It's the exact same position, right? Where things were super drab. But at least Carnell had, that bundle of success that we had in year one, really a lot of it coming right before Leagues Cup. And then we kind of fed it out towards the end of the season. But I agree with what you said. I don't think they're going to rush this decision or this search right now. But I do believe the search begins today because this might be potentially like an era-defining coaching hire for us, right? Because we've got a lot of money now invested in some of these players that are in some of their peak years. And there's some good quality players out there. We're not getting the best out of them. And yes, we're dealing with some injuries, of course. Those look like they're getting better. But Justin, I could see having them just now come out of a coaching hire, a cycle here, just a couple months ago, right? Like they just hired him relatively recently, Olof Mellberg. I foresee them considering taking this outsourced and bringing in some outside help to get this one right. And I'm not saying bringing in outside help is always the right thing to do, but at least remove some of the bias because we flubbed this one up, man. And I would pay more money to get it right than to follow the same process and expect a better result this time around.
Yeah, I agree, because this is one that you don't want to then do what we just did and pull a random guy out of there. And like, yeah, it might have worked with a couple of these guys with like Toy Shirt Hartel. And like, I mean, if you're really into the two Bundesliga, these guys' names. For the majority of soccer fans and City fans, more specifically, we did not know these guys coming over. No one had Olof Mellberg on their radar until we started seeing some European tweets that he was coming over as well. Yeah. So I think this is one that I would love for them to take their time. Let's do a little bit of new coach bump. That's what I was just looking up what the odds were for Saturday. But San Jose has a game on Wednesday, so we're going to have to wait for that one. But Jake, a new coach bump at City Park on our first ever Saturday day game. Oh. I already told you last night how pumped I was. And now I am extremely excited knowing that now Leuven is actually fully fit, if you saw that as well, or said he's good to go. They said Totland's good to go, but you know how that's been. But now it's not Olof. If he's actually good to go, let's throw it in there. But I will say the last thing you want to do if you're this new guy is just throw Totland in there and then he's out for another couple of weeks. So I want to temper expectations, but it's just an exciting time. This is one of those that you've seen it in the Blues. You saw it when we also had our new coach bump last year. We've seen it multiple times across different sports this year for the Blues and in 2019. It's going to be an exciting time for these guys. And these are guys that are going to want to play for him. It's going to be a very similar situation with Hack that you've seen him walking through the halls. Obviously, the guys on City 2 are having a blast, just winning 6-2 the other night.
Yeah.
And Mekhi Joyner putting away 4 goals, and Brendan McSorley, I believe, had the other 2. These guys are going to be pretty excited to hit the training yard tomorrow.
No, I agree. And Justin, even more nostalgia. When we relieved Carnell last year, it was July 1. Our next match was a couple days after when Hackworth took charge against San Jose, and we throttled them at home. It was only 2-0, but we put up 3.37 XG on that. So you're kind of seeing a little bit of the past becoming the present here again for us. Again, I don't want to keep having this happen, but you're hoping that you can get some success. Again, I think, like you said, Totland maybe being available, Leuven maybe being available for this match. Obviously, you're still without Horn as well. And, I'm not sure how I feel about Kessler. I haven't really talked much about him this week, but he wasn't available this last game. I feel good about I think if you just get a result, like show us a response, I think that would go a long way. And that's not even to say that we're going to go advance and push out the way here. But I kind of want Justin the Blues to give a little inspiration here to City because the roster to me is much better on paper than we're doing on the field. And I felt that way about the Blues this season, even in their early season woes. And they had Bannister, in charge, but they were opportunistic. And when their man and Jim Montgomery became available, they were quick to jump on him, brought him on, takes the team to the playoffs. And he will be there longer term, I would imagine, as well. His contract obviously says so. So I do want them to take this slow and get it right. But if their man, because right now, remember everyone, like we have a very large bias to go looking for people in Europe. Europe is done. There's a couple like championships and cup, big games coming up here and there. But for the most part, European seasons are done. So will Lutz go right back to that pool? Because right now managers are getting fired or, any of their contracts are going to look at, new things. Will you go right there? Because right now is probably the best time you're going to have to look at that crop of coaching candidates. And Jonathan, I saw you drop in here too, for this Lutz, or sorry, for the Mellberg hire, they had I remember him talking about this. So I remember why I watched this interview, Justin. We both did on, starting with a database of 25,000 managers worldwide. So, but you got it wrong. So again, I go back to this and I say, I want to see something different about this because we have the luxury. I'm going to say this of like no one really expecting much from us at this point in the season, both internally and probably externally. So I'd rather us take time to get it right and to try a new process to get a new result than to follow the same thing that we just did that didn't pan out.
I do want to call out, that's a great call, Jake, that we're doing this literally as the EPL season just ended and the majority of the other leagues that are over there. Looking at it, EPL starts back up on August 16th of 2025. So we have 2.5 months between that. And I would say, then I'm just using EPL as an example, but a lot of those different leagues over there are around the same timetable. In 2.5 months, that's before their season starts. That means these teams are already in go get it mode. If they haven't been, and they're already past month, if you're getting relegated. But it's something that if we're going to be having conversations, they need to be had now. And it's something that if you want to do interviews, you cannot wait and then just wait to see who kind of, I'm trying to think of it almost like a transfer portal in the NCAA. You can't just wait around and hope like, oh, I know that some of these guys are going to go to Duke and UNC. Maybe they'll fall here to Mizzou.
Right.
But I think this is one where I think you just need to go over there and have some conversations and see who's interested. And Jake, everybody's been complaining about the amount of money that we're not spending on players. We buck up a little bit and we actually try to buy a decent name. But the question is when, again, because we got to see how this next month or so goes, because you don't want to make it too soon because it seems like you have no faith in the caretaker per se in the interim. But it's a difficult time, but it's the right time to just go make some waves.
Let's talk about that Lutz quote one more time, Justin, because I agree with where you went with the roster there. Lutz, our fans deserve a better performing team, and we intend to give them one. That to me doesn't just feel like we intend to give them a better coach. That feels to me like all encompassing. I'm going to take a look at the club. Obviously, a coach is a part of that, but the coach, this also go back to timing, is like that coach also might want certain players to be a part of that as well. And we do most of our business in this upcoming transfer window in July. So it's like, would you want to have your coach ready by then too? So like, I know we're saying take your time, get it right, but that doesn't mean take as much time as you want. That means get your plan together, get your candidates interviewed, do a different process this time around and act on it. So I'm not saying let's just keep this going until next season and we'll get our guy, like whatever that is, because I read that quote, Justin, and that gives me a feeling that there is some shakeup coming in the roster, whether that's outgoings. You definitely got to feel like there'd be some incomings as well. But Lutz believes in this team. Remember, he said there's a window we're entering right now. This is going to be as competitive as we're going to be here these next couple of years. Like, if we're still in that window, according to what he said, you're going to reinforce and add depth to these numbers. So I get the sense that this is not the end. This is more so the beginning of kind of reshaping this team and kind of retooling a little bit just to get that perfect combination of personnel and coaching and vision all into one mixture.
Yeah, and you mentioned this already, but it changed the style that we went about it. Obviously, looking at 25,000 candidates, which is more than what Energizer Park even holds. Can you imagine just like, yep, next? Like, no. Why don't we bring this down to like 50? That's just that, and then we really dive in on these guys. Like, stop wasting time on the other 24,999. Yeah. And let's just focus on 50 dudes and really dig in and figure out what kind of style we have. Because if you go back and look at it, we talked about it, it's like, Olaf didn't really have a whole lot of pedigree when he came from a coaching perspective. Yeah, he was a great player. It doesn't mean that you can also translate that into it, because obviously his personality didn't fit with the club, and neither did his ways. So this is a tough one. Let's just take it slow. I know everybody's extremely excited. Let's see what we got. I would like to see what moves the club is going to be making over the next month or so, because is this the end of the road when it's talking about firings? No, because guess what? Just because we got rid of Olaf doesn't mean we're going to go on a 6-game winning streak now. I would love to see it. Knock on wood. That would be awesome. But I don't see it. I could see us right now, though. We are going to be entering into, Jake, what I would call a slightly easier part of the schedule.
Yep.
I don't have the standings from me, but I know LA Galaxy, trash. We have Orlando. I think they're 4th in the East, but that's at home against us. And then we're at Houston and at RSL, 2 teams that have not been doing that hot so far this season. And this is a time period where, yeah, we've been losing to teams that we shouldn't lose to, and we're definitely losing to teams that we should lose to. But can we kind of make a little bit of a bounce back here and steal some points with some more level-headed teams? Houston, they're 10th in the West. RSL is 12th. I think Dallas is coming up as well on this. Yeah, then we have Dallas and Portland in here twice. Portland's a decent club, but nothing overly outstanding. They're 6th right now. So we're playing a lot of the mid-level teams, and that's technically, Jake, where we're at. We're technically below, but I think with a fully healthy squad, we would also be in that wild card range. So I'd like to see if we can make a little bit of a run here, but I just don't want everybody to think like, oh, Olaf's out. Now we're back. We're going to go on this same run that we did with Hack.
Yeah, I agree, Justin. I think the thought for me is like we land somewhere in the middle there, because I agree coming up here, probably one of the easier, and we should look back at our phases, Justin, or the stages of the season, because we effed the first 2, right? Like we're through 14 games, I think, now in MLS play, and not good. But you're coming up on like you said, one of the easier type of segments. And also remember, we're out of the US Open Cup now. So there's no more fixture congestion for us, no more than any other team in this league. Everyone at least is either with us or more than us in terms of games played. So we're going to have the luxury of rest on our side. We're obviously not the Club World Cup will hit pause for 10 or so days on MLS play. Leagues Cup, they are playing through now, but we'll be playing teams that are playing Leagues Cup games in the middle of the week, and then playing us on the weekend. So what I want to say is I agree with you. This does not mean Olaf gone, City good. I do not believe that. It doesn't matter who comes in. I don't think it just flips on its head like that, because I think there are more systemic things that are going to take time. But I also don't think that we should just continue to accept what's in front of us. I think this window, next couple of weeks, looks very winnable. I even say a month or so, probably 2 months or so, looks as winnable as I've seen this season so far from us. And I will admit, Olaf also got a pretty good heavy hand of some of the better teams in the league, of course, to start his time in the head coach position for us. But looking at San Jose, Portland, Galaxy, Orlando, I definitely would fear a little bit more. But Houston, RSL, these are our next 6 or 7 upcoming fixtures. There's points in there, and there is plenty of brownie points for the fans to dole out to David Critchley if he can get us some of those. So we have not been spoiled this season. We are hungry, and I think this is an opportunity to get some of those back with the team, and we absolutely should. So I like that take, Justin. I want to. Did we talk about Diego's quote yet, Justin, from the firing?
No, we haven't. That's why I wanted to bring up next with you.
Let's do it.
Obviously, Diego has to say something as well, but I want to get your thoughts on, and I'll share the screen again here, Jake. But what are your thoughts on, like, do you feel a little bit of meaning? I know in the last part of Lutz's quote, you're like, hey, I like this. He's kind of pulling on the hearts of the fans and saying that they deserve better. What are your thoughts about Diego's quote here?
I'll read this. So Diego said, "We understood it would take time for Olaf to become acclimated to Major League Soccer and certainly acknowledge injuries made his job difficult, but we simply could not continue down this path. We are disappointed we were not able to find success under Olaf. He moved over here from Sweden and worked tirelessly on behalf of the club during his tenure. We wish him nothing but success in his endeavors." I read that quote, Justin, and it reaffirms to me the pecking order of the sporting department, because Diego's is much more about the human and the overarching sort of narrative vibe, right, of the club. Lutz is that plus a little more detail. So I read Diego's and I agree. I think I feel very similarly on the injury front. As bad as injuries were, we can't continue down this path either. So you got to draw a line somewhere. Clearly, that line was crossed. Whether that you call that in Colorado, I would say he probably made his own tombstone during the Minnesota week, with the both losses there, in particular the U.S. Open Cup, because that spelled the end for that sporting goal, which we know from talking to Diego, that was something they were prioritizing this year and really wanted to give a full run to. So again, I also think these things can be objective. Sometimes there's a lot of emotion behind it, but like, hey, if you're going to miss the playoffs and you're going to get us eliminated from the Open Cup in the round of 16, that's an X and an X. And if you're X and an X and the two goals that I gave you, again, think about it. As client, I'm going to fire you. That you're not meeting standards, and someone else, I believe, can do better under this role.
Jake, I think it actually started the game before that Kansas City game, being up 2-0,
Yep.
and then getting out of there with a draw, because it was also the in-game management on that one. That's where I was confused. It's like, all right, it's almost like it reminds me of Berhalter when he was like, hey, it's 1-1, it's 1-1. And like, we were trying to just play. And like, no, step on these guys' throats and take the game and take the air out of the game with them. And then just beat Kansas City and see if you could try to turn this around, going right back into a U.S. Open Cup match. And that was a frustrating one for me. And Jake, I joked with you, and I want to bring the joke up with everybody else. Who would you rather have as our manager right now? Olaf, Berhalter, or Peter Vermees?
Yeah, we were talking about it. I mean, because there's like it kind of feels like the FMK conversation, and I'm not saying the F word, but the Mary Kill. I would almost love the Vermees to F with the Sporting Kansas fans. I don't think Vermees is a fit at all. I don't really think Berhalter even is either, because I want to take this and start us in. I know I'm not giving the answer you wanted, Justin, but like, let's bring on a manager or a coach that plays the system that we want them to play. I think with Olaf, you're kind of trying to fit like a square piece into a round hole. And it's like, well, he has a good roster he's inheriting, and we know he doesn't have a lot of experience, but we've seen some touches of it. So, we don't need the best coach to come over here. We have a good roster, and they had a good thing going with Hackworth. So just insert and continue. Like, remember you and I talked, Justin, we're like, doesn't move the needle for me as a man on his own, but Lutz is the architect, and he is part of Lutz's cohort now and Lutz's team. So if Lutz believes in him, we're going to give him a fair go. But like, I don't think that anyone has or wields as much control at the club anywhere near as much as Lutz does. So this goes back to, again, he's on a short leash now, in my opinion. If we are not significantly more consistent next year, consistent in a much better way, I would say it's probably going to be early curtains on Lutz Pfannenstiel's tenure, and it should be, because this is 5-year vision, right? Brought the 5-year vision. You've really only had like success for like maybe 3/4 of a season total across this time span.
What's kind of ironic, Jake, is so Lutz's contract is up at the end of next season. Wouldn't that only be 4 seasons? So
Yeah.
when Lutz says 5-year plan, was he already just trying to get himself a little renewal there?
I think
it's only been 4.
That's a good question.
Give me one more, I promise. I've been saying 5-year plan since I got here.
I think he's backdating it to when he like actually got on board.
Yeah, okay. But so this one, Jake, that it kind of irks me even more is like, maybe Lutz is more at fault here, because guess what? You're building the team in the system that you want to play, and then you just go out and just hire this Swedish dude that is nothing a part of the system and doesn't care about who he's upsetting from a media perspective or even a club perspective. It seems like he was not rubbing the right way between Lutz and also Diego, and then obviously with the players, I think he lost the locker room. So Lutz was the one that ultimately decided Olaf's our guy, and it's a little confusing to me that he was just like, yeah, you're good to go on a system, and you're just going to completely redo our system that we've been working on and kind of made our own flavor of soccer, I would say, in the past 3 years.
Yeah. We have a comment in here from Adam. How much do you think Diego is to blame for Olaf? So now we're like the who came first, like the chicken or the egg, right? I think Diego was definitely a part of those, obviously, conversations and the decision to hire Olaf Mellberg, and he will shoulder, a proportional sum of that weight. I still think the majority of that weight goes to Lutz's shoulders, but everyone, if anything comes to this, Justin, I think it's this: is that there's a lot more accountability and a lot more visibility now into the roles in the club, who does what, where the buck stops, and where something else begins, because everyone's now been trying to point fingers and come to, okay, what's wrong with us, right? And who do we look at? Who do we point the finger at? So I think everyone underneath the club structure that has any sort of sporting role at this point is probably taking a look inward and saying, okay, you know what? The bell's been rung. Now, it's like, Justin, you look around at your team, like, and the guy that is next to you hasn't been doing great, but he's a good guy. You like him, gets the axe. It's like, okay, I might start pushing a little bit harder now. It's not because I was slacking, but it's because I know people are looking at my department. So I'm not gonna give them an excuse to get rid of me either. So I think the lift will hopefully come now, because everyone knows that this is shaky ground that you're on. Fans are talking, we're talking on the podcast, everyone's talking. Like, it's the most talk about corporate soccer that I've ever really been a part of in my life. And so I'm hoping that we'll be better off for it in the future.
I agree, because it kind of has taken people away from being upset and kind of complaining. I'm trying to use correct words about Klaus and some of the other guys. And it's like, because everybody's just like, oh, what is this starting 11? And how are we expected to play like this with this system? Typically, when you're watching soccer or any sport, you're complaining about the players. It's not usually as much as the front office, as you're saying. And this has been one that's kind of been taking it off there. So now that we have this, are the guys just going to bounce right back? I do think that we get a little bit of a new coach bump up here, and we talked about it. I'd say in the next 8 games, I think only 2 teams are even in the top 4 in either their Western or Eastern conferences, respectively, and the majority of them aren't even they're on the outside looking in on the playoffs. So I would like for us to see a little bit of a bump. And sorry, Jake, I was looking this up because it made me crack up too. LA Galaxy just extended their coach not too long ago, and they were 0-10-3. Could you imagine what our players would be saying if we're like, hey, Olaf, we're going to give you an extension, buddy?
Yeah. I was listening.
Greg Vanney he brought him to they won the MLS Cup. They're missing Richie Boosh, all that stuff. But it would just kind of crack me up when you think about all the moves that are happening in MLS.
We would be flipping tables. And I think Greg Vanney deserved that extension for what he did last season. But why they would decide to announce that when they have not won a single game this year, and we've won a couple of games this year, I would just probably not announce that. There's no one, I think, that forces you to publicly announce an extension to a coach's contract. I know it's normal to see those, but like, why don't you just keep that on the shelf for a little bit? We don't need people reacting to that. Or maybe it's like a comms move to like change the narrative. I have no idea, but announcing an extension during that time is so bold. I respect it, but I know they got a lot of uproar.
Yeah. So honestly, Jake, I don't know if there's anything else that we want to touch on this. I think it's time for Olaf. I do not believe, in my opinion, that we will see something happen with Lutz or Diego, at least in the short term. I think you rock the boat enough with this, and we see what we can do in this time period. Like you said, we don't have any midweek matches, or I think we have one coming up in the next 2 months. So we're going to have almost a full week's break every week to try to get these guys back to healthy. And I would like to see what they can do when they're healthy and playing underneath of a guy that they like.
Justin, let's just take a quick look at questions. I'm going to scroll Instagram really quick to see what kind of questions we picked up here and see if there's anything we haven't touched on. And you can look at our stream here. But the first one I saw was from Jack on Instagram saying, why are the players not taking more of the responsibility for the losses? A coach can only do so much, but if the players are not putting the ball in the back of the net, I think you're probably going to hear a lot of players take some responsibility, especially in these coming days. Maybe that pregame press conference will be pretty big. And I imagine they'll do a press conference, tomorrow or really soon to address this change specifically. But I totally agree that is one thing we haven't talked too much about is player accountability, because it's not like he's getting the best out of his guys. Some of those mistakes we see, Justin, you can't even coach those. Like, it's just guys making dumb mistakes or just missing things they shouldn't miss. So I think there will be more of an air of player responsibility and accountability for this, because they don't like to be a part of a guy losing his job again. Like, it sucks. Remember how badly Indy took that, right? When Carnell got fired, they had a really special relationship. And I think ultimately it resulted in Indy wanting to go and follow Carnell. And look what he's doing now with him in Philadelphia. But I think player accountability, we're going to probably hear a lot more about in this coming week or so, because they take that personally. They spend a lot of time with that guy as well. And you don't want to be a part of something going down like that. So I like that. I like that comment, because it's one thing I don't think is being talked about overly much.
Yeah, but I will say I think it's a mix of him losing the locker room on that sense as well, because my favorite one to bring up, and I probably beat a dead horse with this, but Celio, team of the match week, and then the next game he doesn't even see the pitch. And so, like, how are you expected as a professional athlete or anybody to do your job when you just had the best week that you can, essentially, with his bender of a goal, and then you don't even have an idea if you're going to start or not, much less play a single minute, which he didn't. And I think that's a terrible mindset to have with your players, because I highly doubt that Olof really had that much of a relationship with these guys. One, from a lack of timing perspective, what he come over in like January, and then two, so it's only been 4.5 months. And then two, I just think that the way he played them and kind of toyed with them on like, oh, you're not going to start, you're going to start. Remember when we went in the dip, we're like, where's Klaus, free Klaus, all of this? Like, now imagine that being your DP, not knowing if he's even going to touch the field. So I personally, I guess all this to say, I appreciate the question. I think that we're going to start to see some more blame put on the players if this continues down this road. However, I don't think these guys feel that bad, because I don't think he didn't even lose the locker room. I don't think he ever really had it. I never heard these guys talk about how much they loved Olof. It's like,
yeah,
it's more about the team itself. But Jake, one thing that is not going to be fixed with this that I wouldn't expect is sneezing, saying, I still have questions about what's happening in practice injury wise. And I don't know if that's one. I remember the Taylor Twellman tweet that he said that, like, apparently he played 11v11 the day before a game. I'm assuming that was an Olof thing, but also, is that going to be fixed now that Olof's out? Like, just by changing that one little tweak the day before a game, or are we still going to be injury prone for the rest of the season? What are your thoughts?
Usually, I don't know if it's the same in MLS, but usually the overturn of a coaching tenure also results in different staff across the board. I don't think that happened for Carnell, but you would think so, right? Like, I would think there'd be some other staff changes as well, and it may not come in like the medical side of things. But I will say, it's a two-way street. Like, I'm obviously a big fan of Arsenal as well, and I will say, looking at that team, Arteta, their coach, is probably the highest up medical personnel they have too. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek. He's no medical degree, but he is the one that makes the training plans. He plays players into the ground. He mismanages injuries, and they become, little things that carry on and fester over the course of a season. I think we were getting a little bit of a taste of that here, because a coach has their own role to play. They can take the advice. They can also ignore the advice of those staff, and those people, should be respected. They should be listened to. They're all part of I would say, like a coaching circle, right? Like, every bit of analytics and health and rehabilitation and tactics and sports science, all those things should come together and create success. And I think you start to see things like this where it's just more than bad luck to me. Like, there was bad luck for sure, and there's also things that you can control that you're failing to keep the reins on. I think we saw that with players like Nilsson. We've seen Totland get mismanaged, in my opinion, this year. Again, we're just speculating, right? That's all we can do, though. We see the inputs, we make our own conclusions as well. So I would hope that this becomes a bigger focus of the next, tenured coach, or even right now in the caretaker manager side, is let's take better care of our assets in the best way that we can. And we're going to be, like I said, dealing with the least amount of fixtures than anyone else in this league. There'll be a couple of teams like us, but there's no excuses, right? Like, we should not be playing players in the ground. We have less games. We have better quality. Guys should be coming healthy, and we have still a chance to squeak into, that goal. Not that should be everything, but if there's a chance, we should manage like there is.
And I think that we will see this, because we're talking about this as Critchley is going to be coming up through the reins, and he's been a part of the academy process, and he knows everybody. I don't think we're going to be coming in and like not taking the advice of a guy that Critchley's been with for the past 4 years when we talk about our medical team. So I'm being serious. I really do think that this one, like, yeah, we always have a coach bump, but I actually truly think that we're going to see it again this time, because Carnell lost the locker room. Hack picked it back up. Olaf never even had the locker room. I'd like to see what David Critchley could do with these guys, because it's not fun when you're losing, but it sucks even more when you're not liking who you're playing with or under. And so I think with this one, it's like, can we just try to build this? Like, let's just get in the locker room and talk about this. This season's in the dumps. What do you guys want to do? You want to go another, 5 months of this and just having a terrible season? No. Let's go out there, have some fun, see if we can turn this thing around.
So I think we've kind of beat this one again with what we had. Like, again, this announcement, Justin, came now just an hour ago. We've almost spent 45 minutes talking about it. We're going to hear a lot more in the coming days on this. This is not the end. We'll feature that in whatever we do for the rest of this week here, Justin, as San Jose looms. But again, I want to say ultimately a positive. What I will give the club credit for is when things go this way, if you'd have told me, Justin, we'd fire 2 coaches as St. Louis City SC within a year, a calendar year of time, I would have told you to shove it, because St. Louis doesn't do that, right? Like, we have patience. We're a mid-market. Like, we're not going to be that aggressive. But this club is giving off a different vibe here, and it's not all just fan pressure, right? Like, they are, when things are going wrong, I will give them credit that they're acting. Is it the right actions? Yet to be determined. But at least they've shown the balls to just go for it sometimes. And so I'm hoping that that becomes something that we can get it right again. But I like that they're listening. I like that they're being aggressive in cases like these, because there's a lot more to lose than just more losses in this season and not making the goals. Like, you're going to lose fans. You're going to lose mentality. You're going to lose a lot more if we keep this up. So I applaud the effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ownership group is obviously seeing it from ticket sales perspective, and everybody's seeing it from the frustrations. But it's, again, like you said, they're not just doing this because the fans are pissed. It's a sporting move, and it's something that needed to happen, because like I said, what are we just going to kind of keep going down this path? I'm kind of surprised we even gave them that much time to go down it. But to your point, Jake, I feel like we don't see this a lot in baseball. We look at the Cardinals, and like when we were doing terrible, and like it's like everybody's calling for Marmol. They're not just firing him because they know it's a long season. However, when it's this season for us, yes, long over time, shorten the amount of games, 34 total. And right now, where we're sitting, how many games we played, Jake? We played like
14, I think.
We played. We've only played 11. It's pretty solid. No, we played 15. All right, that's the amount of points we have. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
15 games. So we're pushing almost halfway through this season, and I think it's one where, yeah, if you're seeing the Cardinals do like this halfway through their season, maybe you talk about that as well. So that's maybe the time seems short. But in reality, when the number of games and the amount of available points are there, we have to make a move, and I'm glad we did.
I saw a great comment I'm looking for, Justin. I think it's a good way to go. It was on Instagram. And let me find the right person, because I want to give them credit, because I agree. This is the vibe that I'm leaving this now with. This person said, I don't know if there's a name, but NLINDLEYESQ. Yeah, there's no name in there. But anyway, this guy said, just took my tickets off SeatGeek for this weekend. Glad to have a reason to go now. And couldn't have said it better. Not that my tickets were on SeatGeek. I was going to be there anyway, but trying my hardest to get excited, even though the product hasn't been exciting, but I'm behind the team. But I like that, because now there is something to go watch, or at least there's like the unknown that we're foraying into now, which is so much better sometimes than what you do know, when that do know is painful. So maybe this will be painful, but at least we're going to experience something new, a new energy, a new vibe. Justin, I would be shocked if Energizer Park is not bumping on Saturday.
Dude, the first Saturday home game, a day game that we've had ever in our history. And now we got new coach bump. I don't even know what style we're going to play, what formation we're going to play. I don't know who's going to play. Makai Joyner coming up after scoring 4. Like it just makes you excited to be out there. It's going to be great weather in St. Louis. So if you haven't already, get to the pitch and join us there. It's going to be an awesome Saturday. And it kind of just gives me goosebumps. Kind of got a little bit more life to this team.
Yeah. I mean, again, my parting words is that, this is the fandom. This is enjoy the ups and the downs of fandom. Like, enjoy the experience. It's not all about the cups, not all about all the wins. It's about the process, because this is how you make true fans. It's like you're along for this whole journey. We all have been. We've cut our teeth, right? And there's only been a couple of years here, but we've had some low lows. So let's hope that we've trenched. We've hit the bottom of this one. With the valley is now becoming a mountain, and we're climbing back up again. So that's all you can do, is just believe in this team. They're taking an action. Hopefully it's in the right direction here. We can always hope for the best, but for now, we're going to be sitting behind the team in our normal section and showing up, making some noise, and rooting the guys on to a new chapter as we turn the page on the Olof Mellberg reign.
All for City.
All for City. We'll talk to everyone. Justin, I don't even know what's going to happen. It's been a weird week already, but we'll be back again at some point this week to talk a little about San Jose, that new coach bum, and what's hoping and making to be an amazing day game on Saturday. So we'll talk to you later this week, and All for City.
All for City.